If you are looking to learn Java Spring Boot, then you are on the right place. Hi, I'm Alex, and welcome to the Java Spring Boot for beginners. In this second part, we are going to take things from where we left on the previous video, and we are going to dive deeper into the Java Spring Boot. More specifically, we are going to take a closer look to the project structure and understand how to organize our code. We are going to learn about controllers, and we will be building the logic to manage our library resources. And last one, we're going to learn about RESTful services and request handling, and how to interact with our application using different HTTP methods. So let's dive in. Here's IntelliJ with our project library management service. If you didn't watch our first part, I highly recommend you do, so you understand how you can set up and run our service locally. But if you already have the Java application locally, then we can dive deeper in the project structure. It is very important to have a well-organized project structure. A well-organized project structure is crucial for maintainability and readability of our Java code. Think of it as a library. If books are nearly arranged, it's easier to find what we are looking for. The main Java code sits inside the source folder, where you can see that we have two other folders, right? Main and test. These are called packages. So if we start navigating inside the main package, and we're going to do like main Java and com tutorials library management, which is what we chose on the last video. And here is the application class. The application class is the entry point for our application, for the management, from the library management tool. I'm going to rename this application to be library management. So it have more meaning for our project. So this is our entry point for our Java service. On the left side, the Java and com tutorials library management, it's called a package. The other folder that you can see inside the source one is the test. Here, we usually add only our tests, unit tests, and integration tests. We're going to talk about those in a future video. Let's focus a bit more on the main folder and in the main package. Typically, a Java project is separated in 4 packages: controller, model, repository, and service. But what do they mean? Let me show you very quickly. The controller package. This package will contain our REST controllers that handle incoming requests. Inside the model package, we will define the data models like book and user. The repository package will contain the interfaces for database operations, like inserting a new book in the table. And the service package, which will contain business logic for our application. Let's move to IntelliJ and create those packages. Inside our main package, I'm going to right-click and select New and Package. Let's name this controller. Let's add similarly the rest of those: repository, model, and last one, service. In this video, we're going to focus in the model and the controller. Let's start by creating our first controller. Right-click, New, and add a Java class. Let's name this one book controller. So a controller is what makes the applications handle requests from the users. I will give you an example very soon, but in order for Spring Boot to understand that this is a controller, you should add this annotation: add REST controller. So this annotation tells Spring Boot that this class is representing a controller and can handle HTTP requests. Inside the book controller, we're going to add a method. So public string. So this method is going to return a string, get books. And this method is going to return a list of books. At this moment, it's just a string, but it doesn't really matter. And we have to add another annotation here, which is a get mapping. And in parentheses, we need to set the path of this method. I will give you an example right now. What does this mean? What you need to understand here is that these annotations, the REST controller says Spring Boot that, okay, this book controller is serving HTTP request, and this get method, get mapping, is saying that the get requests, so the requests that have the method get, are going to be served by this method. Let's jump in the browser and test this one. Run the application. And then in your browser, after the application start completes, we can navigate to localhost 8090 because that's what we set on the last video. And the path is books. As you can see here in the browser, on the top, it says list of books. I will zoom in a bit so you can see that more clear. List of books. Very nice. Let's go back to our IntelliJ. At this point, I would like to tell you a bit more about the HTTP methods. So we have already talked about get, but there are many more than that. The most used ones are the get, the post, the put, and the delete. Let me tell you a bit more about each of those. So the get method, we use the get method when we want to retrieve some kind of information. So let's say that we want to get the list of books. The post method, we use it when we want to send some information or create some resources. For example, if we want to create a new book entry. The put information we use when we want to update some resources. For example, if we want to update the book title or the book author. And the delete method, we use it when we want to delete some resources. For example, if a book is not going to be anymore available in our website, we want to use the delete method. Now, in order for us to test all these methods, we have to use a tool other than our browser. The browsers typically, they do only get methods. Now, I would like to introduce you to Postman. Open your web browser and visit postman.com/downloads. You are going to see a landing page similar to this one here, and you can download by clicking the download button for Mac Intel or Mac Apple chip. If you are visiting from a Windows machine, you are going to see something similar, but just for Windows. In my case, I have already downloaded Postman, and I'm going to show you right now how it looks like. This is Postman. If you want to make a request to your running service, you can click this plus symbol here. On the left side, you can see different options for the method. As we have already told, the most common one is get, post, put, and delete. But as you can see, there are more like patch, head, options, and others. So let's go with the get one. And let's make a request to our service. This is http ://localhost 8090/books. And call it. Very nice. Here's the answer. List of books. Okay, let's move now back to our IntelliJ. We have already created our first controller successfully. Let's create our first model now. On the model package, on the left side, right-click, new. We're going to create the book class. The book, let's say that it has 3 properties. The first property is the book ID. And it's going to represent by a long type, book ID. The second one is going to be the book title. So it's a string title. And the third one is the author's name, which is string. And let's call it author. Okay, inside the class, we need a way to get and set the values of each properties. And we have to create a separate method for each of these actions. We could have IntelliJ generated those for us, but as this is the first time that we're creating a class, let's do that manually. So public long get ID. And this will return the ID. Now we need to set it. So public void, because it's not going to return anything, set ID. This is going to take an input as a parameter, a long one, which is going to be the ID. And we're going to set this ID, which is the ID of the class, to be equals to ID that we are setting the parameters. Very nice. Similarly, let's do the same for the rest of those. So string get title and return title. Public void set title string title. This title it's equals to type, which is the one that we are setting the parameter again. And last one, we have the author. So get author. As you can see, IntelliJ is already suggesting some pre-filled options. Get author, which is going to return the author. And public void set author to set the author name. This author equals to author. Very nice. So we have here already a full class that it does a few things like we have a book class that has an ID, a title, and an author. We can get and set every each of those. Let's stop the application from running and let's go back to our book controller. Now let's change this one here and make it so it return a list of books. Okay. In the top, we need to have a private list of books, which is the class that we just created. Import class, we need to import the list class. And we can say books, which is equal with a new array list. Now this getBooks method, it can return the books. And we need to change the return type to be a list of book. Very nice. At this point, the list of books is empty. So we need a way to add books, right? Let's create that too. We can create public method, which is going to return just a book. So let's say it's going to return the book that we just created. And we can name it like add book. It's going to expect a parameter that it's going to be a book, the type book, and the name book. This book is going to be added in the books list, right? Books.add inside parentheses book. And in the end, it's going to return the book that we just created. Now, as we said previously, in order for Spring Boot to understand that this is going to be used as an endpoint, so when the users call it, we need to add an annotation. In this point, we're going to add the post mapping. Another change that we will need to do is to remove this getMapping books here and put it as a main path on our controller. So the request mapping is going to be for everything in the books path. Now we don't need this here. We don't need this part here. And we already have the methods getBooks and the method to add books. But in order for Spring Boot to understand that this book is going to be retrieved from the request, we need to add one more annotation in this parameter, which is the request, which is the request body annotation. So now we're telling Spring Boot that this book parameter will be retrieved from the request body. And what does it mean? I will show you in action. Let's jump again in Postman. Now let's create a new request. This time we need to do a post request. It's going to be similar to the previous one, so it's going to be still in the books endpoint, but we need to pass a body. The body has to be a raw but JSON format. And we have to say the ID. Let's say this is number 1 because it's our first book. We have a title, which is my first book. And we have the author, which let's say that this is my own book, Alex. When we click this send button, we are going to send a request to our service. One thing that we will do is to run our service. So let's go back to IntelliJ and just click the run button. Wait until it runs. Okay, our service is ready. So let's start our application and test what we have built until now. We are running the service. The service is running import 8090, and now we can jump in Postman. So our first endpoint is the get one. So we want to get books. If we send this request, so our first endpoint is a get books. If we send this request, you will notice that the result is empty. If we send the post request with the JSON object that it is expecting, so it's an ID, a title, and an author, the response is going to be the same as this is what expected, and we switch back to the get request, and this time if we send it again, here it is. It's an array of books. Let's go again to the post request, and this time let's add a new one. Let's add ID number 2. So this is my second one. And the author, it's like Alice. Send the request. The response is the one that we sent, which is expected. And if you switch back to the get request and you send the HTTP get request to the books endpoint, you will see that now we have 2 books. How cool is that? We are already creating books and we're retrieving books. Now let's go back to IntelliJ and create a couple of more endpoints with the rest of the methods that we have learned so far. Here we are. Let's stop our application, minimize the terminal, and let's create a put mapping endpoint. This is going to be public. It's going to update the book. So the method will be update book, which is going to expect the book ID, which is a long, and the book by itself, which is the updated book. Similar to the post request, we need to annotate the second parameter with the request body so that SpringBoot knows that this is going to be retrieved from the request body. And we have this long ID. Where is it going to come from? This is going to come from the URL, so from the path. We can put a parenthesis in the put mapping annotation and use double quotes, slash, curly braces, and inside here you can say ID. So SpringBoot is going to map this ID here from the URL to the one that we're expecting in the method. And for that, we just need to add an annotation which is called path variable. Now, how we're going to update the book? We already have the list of books here. We can make a loop in that list, and we can say for var book in books, and if book dot get ID is equals the ID that we are passing the parameter. Then we have to update the values. Before we move forward, if you don't know about loops and if conditions, I highly suggest you watch the tutorials that I have for programming beginners. And there I explain everything regarding the conditions, the loops, and how you can set up IntelliJ and Java SDK local. You will find the link in the description for that. So let's go back to the code. Now that we found the book, we need to update the values. So we can say book dot set title, which is going to be the one from the updated book, get title, and book set author is going to be the one from the updated book, get author. And that's it. Then we can do a return book here, as we don't want to go through the entire loop. And in the end, we can return a null, which will indicate that we didn't manage to find the requested book. Let's try this in Postman. Let's run our application and let's jump to Postman. I will copy the URL and create a new request. This time it's going to be a put one in the endpoint books, but it's also expecting to have an ID. Let's say that we want to update the ID number 2. Okay, let's go from the beginning. So the get request right now, because we restart our application, is going to bring us an empty array. We're going to create book number 2 with ID 2, with title is my second book, and author Alice. Okay, going back to the get request, now we see that, okay, yeah, we have that book, correct. Now, moving to the put request, I'm going to copy this JSON again, and we need to set the body to be a row and JSON, and just paste inside here the JSON object, remove the ID, it's not needed, and let's update the title. Okay, and we'll say this is my new title. We have already set the ID in the URL, so let's send this request. That's cool. This is a response, which is ID number 2. Title, this is my new title. That's on the update, on the put request. Let's go back to the get books and see what it's going to bring. And as you can see, it's already updated, right? So ID is number 2. Title, this is my new title. And the author is still Alice. Very nice. We are already updating books. Let's jump back to IntelliJ. Let's stop our application. And this time, let's create a way to delete a book. Let's create a delete mapping here. Delete mapping. Public. Let's say that this time we're going to just return a string, a message to the user. String, delete book. I'm going to copy the path variable from the above function. Paste it here. And then we need a way to delete from the books. But before that, let's map our variable, our parameter, to the path variable. Double quotes, slash, brackets, and ID. That's it. So inside the books list, you can do books dot remove if, and you can say on the book arrow, when this book ID is equal to the ID. So when we find a book ID with equals this ID that we have passed in the path variable, it's going to be removed from the list. And then we can return a message, book with ID was deleted. Let's run this one now. And let's go back to Postman. Now let's test everything together. Let's start with the get request. If you want to get the books, you will see that the list is empty. Let's create a book right now, and you will see that the response is okay. And if you get the books, the book will be here. So book with ID 2, this is my second book. If we go to the put request, we want to update the title, and we expect that the title should be, this is my new title. And so if you get the books, yes, here it is. This is my new title. And let's now say that we want to delete that book. So we're going to delete book number 2. The book with ID 2 was deleted, and if you return to the get books request and send one more time, you will see that the book was deleted. How cool is that? So we have created the full functional CRUD REST API right now. Let's jump back to the IntelliJ. We have already created 4 endpoints for our book controller. The get endpoint, which gets the books, the add a book endpoint, which is creating a new book, the update book, which is updating an existing book, and the delete book, which is deleting the book from our endpoint. One last thing that I would like to show you is how you can debug this application. First of all, you can stop this one here and run with a debugger by clicking this debug icon. On the line 17, you can click on the column where you can see the numbers, and it's going to be highlighted in red. That means that there is a breakpoint there. Let's put another breakpoint in the line 22. I will remove this one. Let's jump back to Postman, and let's try to create a new book. You will notice that the application stopped in line 22. And if you hover over the book variable in the parameters, you will see that this is the request that we sent from the Postman, right? So this is a very useful way that you can debug and find issues in your code. We will do much more in the future, but just for you to know, and you can experiment a bit on your own. So that's it for this episode. On the next one, we are going to learn about dependency injections and component, which are very, very crucial part of Spring Boot. And we are going to develop more features on our library management tool and make it a bit more useful. But until then, if you have any questions, feel free to drop a message in the comment sections. I will try to reply as soon as possible, or you can reach out through my social media pages. Until then, happy coding and see you on the next one. Bye.